So 3 really important things in your prayer life. Number 1 is knowledge of God, because all of his promises are predicated on how well you and I know him. Number 2 is out of the abundance of this knowledge of God, now you can utter some words. You can say the things that you need to say to him according to his will. And then number 3 is you're going to take action in the direction of your expected end. You're going to take action in the direction of the destiny God has called you to, because he has already placed everything you need for life and godly living along the path of your destiny. Don't be the Christian who is standing here looking for God's answer here when what he has for you is ahead of you because you didn't take action. All right, so that was number 2. We're into number 3 now. Component part number 3 is action. Action is, it's really 2 sides. The second side of the coin of utterance, all right? When you speak, you have to take action. There are a lot of folks who think praying is, you say a lot of words, and then you just kind of wait on God to do the things that you think he will do. God will actually require that you do something, all right? As a matter of fact, when you take action after you pray, what you're really saying to God is, Lord, I believe you are doing what you have promised to do in prayer. When you pray and do nothing, what you're saying to God is, sir, thank you, but I really don't believe you're going to do what you've asked me to pray about. All right. So action it supports how well you believe in the prayer that you have just prayed. And I write about this quite a bit in Radical Prayers, Radical Results. In 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3 to 10, God says that he has already provided everything we need for life and for godly living. So God has already made provision for us. So your praying is and taking action, it's not so that God can now go and create some things just for you. It is so that you can see the manifestation of the things that God has already provided for you. So action is so important, because if you don't take action, nothing happens. Let me just put it bluntly to you. If you pray and don't take action, nothing happens, because God needs you to be moving. In 2 Chronicles chapter 20, King Jehoshaphat, one of the great kings of Israel, he was surrounded by his enemies. And they were great enemies, more than one. And so Jehoshaphat took a survey of the land, and he knew immediately that if God did not get involved, they would be wiped out. So what did he do? He went into prayer and fasting and asked all of his people, the whole nation, to get into prayer and fasting. And they cried out to God and said, Lord, if you don't get involved, we are finished. So God said to Jehoshaphat, okay, I'll take care of you, but this is what you have to do. You are going to get up and prepare yourself for battle. What you're going to do is you're going to put your praise and worship people, the people who lead in song, you're going to put them at the front. They're going to be praising and worshiping me, and you're going to get dressed and ready for battle, all of you and your armies, and you're going to go out to meet your enemies at the designated place to do battle. And God could have said to Jehoshaphat and his people, listen, don't worry about it. I am God. I'll go take care of it because you're my people. But no, that's not what he said. He said, you have to get up, dress as you're going to war, Put the prayer people, the people who sing in front, and you go to meet your enemies. But guess what? By the time, see, Jehoshaphat, first of all, did exactly what God had asked him to do. Got dressed for battle, pick up their swords, got the prayer and worship team in front, and they went out to meet their enemies. But guess what? By the time they got there, their enemies, God had confused them and they killed themselves. So when Jehoshaphat and his people got there, all they did was gather the spoils from their enemies. So action is absolutely necessary. It is crucial. It is important. God is going to answer your prayer, but you have to be going in the direction, okay, of your prayer. I'm from Cameroon, West Africa, and soccer, well, we call it football. That's the real name for it, you see. Soccer, football, it is like the national pastime, all right? So even guys like me who can, I can't brag of having any serious football skills, but we grew up playing it. So yes, I can do a dribble and I can score the ball as well. But this is the thing. When you're playing soccer, all right, and you are the guy, the goalpost is destiny, right? When you play soccer, it's not just to kick the ball around, it's so that that ball can ultimately make it into the goalpost. That is the ambition when you play. And so you could say that is destiny. If you are going to be the guy who's going to put the ball in the net, you can't stand in the back of the field, right? And ask for the ball to be sent to you. You have to be the guy who is on his way or her way to the goalpost. You have to be in action. You have to be heading in the direction of the goalpost because you are expecting to go and put a ball in the net. And when people see you and they see you're nicely positioned and you're getting into the place where you can actually put the ball in the net, they tend to send the ball to you. So you can't be standing at the back of the field and saying, send the ball to me. This is what is happening with a lot of believers. God is sent, because according to 2 Peter chapter 1, 3-10, he has already provided what you need for life and godly living. But God has what you need positioned over there along the path of your destiny. You are supposed to be heading towards it. But here you are standing with the deer in the headlight syndrome, waiting for the ball to be sent to you. And God is saying, son, daughter, move. I have sent what you need. It's over there. It's over there. Head towards it. That's where your destiny is. But here you are standing. This is what a lot of believers do. They think that because they have uttered some words, they can just sit around and wait for God to do everything. No, sir. No, my sister. You got to be heading in the direction of destiny. You have to be heading in the path that God has called you to. So when you are not heading in that direction, it explains why a lot of people are not seeing the responses, the things, the manifestation of the things that they're praying for. Remember, utterance has to be within the will of God. But you have to take action. Let me give you some additional scriptures to help you. Needless to say, King Jehoshaphat and his people, they had an amazing victory that day. They took action after they prayed, all right? In Joshua chapter 3, verse 13-15, this is when the Israelites were going into their promised land. They got to the river Jordan, and when they got to the river Jordan, I mean, God could have sent them into Canaan at any other time, but he sent them to cross into their promised land at the very time when the river Jordan was at flood stage. It was wild, it was rough, and it was high. There was no way that they could have crossed into the promised land. And so they were there, and they were puzzled. But God said to Joshua, you guys get into the promised land. I've already given it to you. But this is what he said to them. You're going to get the priests to carry the ark, okay, of the covenant, and they are going to go to the very edge of the river Jordan that was at flood stage. And the moment their feet touched the water parted. This is to say, I'm telling you, when I started writing this book, Radical Prayers, Radical Results, in all the books that I have written, I could have summarized everything that was in my mind in like 4 or 5 pages. But the moment you make the commitment to God that you're going to trust Him to supply what you need, and you take that step of faith, He comes in and does what needs to be done. Those priests, they could have stayed on the bank of the Jordan and sacrificed 10,000 cows and 100,000 lambs. They could have prayed in tongues and fasted and done all kinds of things for 7, 12, 13, 15 years. They would never have entered their promised land. They would never have. They had to take action and trust God and moved in the direction of destiny and took the first step, even though it looked absolutely impossible. Because the river Jordan was at flood stage, you jumped in there and it would have swept you to your death. But God said, in spite of what you see, get to the Jordan and put your foot in the water. And as soon as they did, the Jordan parted. The ground was not even moist. It was dusty. That's how God does His work. So that you don't wonder or find some other answer for what you've experienced. It went from being at flood stage to waters parting, and the ground itself was dusty. That's how God does it. But those Israelites had to take action in order to get into their destiny. In Joshua chapter 7, verse 10 to 13, now they had already gotten to the promised land. And just like God does His things, remember when they got there, He had given them supernatural provision. He had given them the power to rule over all of their enemies. And they went into a land that was already built up. Farms they didn't have to plant, houses they didn't have to build. Again, I've taught on this before. They got in there and they were doing really well. All of their enemies were afraid of them. And then one day, they had to fight one of their smallest enemies, a people called Ai. They didn't even mobilize the entire Israelite army. They selected a few thousand people and sent them off to go and wipe out those guys. But guess what? To their utter shock, they got beaten. They got beaten so badly. And so Joshua is on his knees in Joshua chapter 7, and he is crying out and saying, God, you brought us all of this way. This little enemy we had, they have crushed us. Now, all of our bigger enemies, they're going to say, oh my goodness, yes, the Israelites are weak now. They are going to overwhelm us. And he was crying, he was on his knees, and the angel of the Lord came to him and he said, get off your knees. What are you doing down there? Get off your knees. There are some things that you need to take care of. There are some things that you need to do so that you guys can be victorious again. What I'm saying to you, my brother and my sister, there is a time when you need to stop praying. There is a time when you need to stop praying, and what you need to do is take action. Well, guess what? Joshua got off his knees, dried his eyes, and followed the instructions that God had given him, went and took care of what needed to be taken care of. In this case, there was sin among the Israelites. There were some things that they needed to stop doing. If you are believing for prosperity and increase in your life, then maybe you need to stop stealing from your workplace. Maybe you need to stop billing for time that you never put in. Maybe you need to stop causing so much problem in your family. Maybe you need to become a kinder person, a more forgiving person. There might be some things in your life that you need to deal with, and then come back to God and see Him manifest in your life by answering your prayers. So you need to be very careful. Joshua got off his knees, stopped praying, wiped his eyes, went and took care of what he needed to take care of, the sin that was among the Israelites. And then he came back and they were victorious. Action, my friends, it is crucial for the manifestation of your prayer. You don't just utter those powerful words and then stay quiet and dormant. No, you have to take action to your expected end. You have to be moving in the direction of what you expect God to do. If you were thinking you need a house, you want to own a house, you don't do that by fasting and praying on your knees. You pray, yes, but you have to get out there, get yourself a real estate agent and start looking for places. That's what you do. When Naomi and I bought that house, when we signed the paper, we didn't know where the money was going to come from. Now, listen to me. You don't go and do because you said Brother Sam and Sister Naomi did. Don't do that now, okay? You have to have revelation. You have to be in the place of that deep intimacy with God. You have to understand how prayer works, all right? Now, if you're believing God for a husband, well, listen, you got to stop hanging out with the wrong people. If you're believing God for a wife, maybe you need to clean up that car with that old McDonald's box and old coffee cups and all the snack wraps that are in there. Maybe you need to clean up a little. You know what I'm saying? Get some fresh clothes. Don't just pull it out of the old bin with dirty things and put it on. You know, maybe you should pull up your pants a little if you're looking for a respectable, godly woman in your life. And not try to be a bad boy or be a bad girl. You have to prepare yourself because you are expecting something. I remember when my son was still living at home. And man, these kids, it happens everywhere. Where his took off his pants, that's where it stayed. And the things, game consoles, everything was everywhere. And then one day, my wife and I got in the house and my goodness, we heard the vacuum going. We were very confused. We got into this young man's room. The place was sparkling clean. we thought something was wrong. And then we got revelation. He had met the woman that he was going to be marrying. And all of a sudden, he felt this need to clean up and to take care of things and to prepare himself. He took action. That's how it works. That's how it works. So, if you are expecting that the prayers you have prayed, God is going to answer those prayers, you have to begin to act as though you expect God to answer those prayers. It says to him, Daddy, I trust you. So that is component part number 2. We could talk a little bit more, but let me end this here. So we talked about utterance, the power of words, and we talked about taking action. Now, I'm going to give you component part number 1. Remember, we didn't do this chronologically. We talked about 2, we talked about 3, but component part number 1, it is number 1 because it's the most important. It is number 1 because everything else, it actually is the foundation of your prayer life. It carries everything else, all right? It is knowledge of God. The most powerful thing you need to know in your prayer life is God himself, the one to whom you pray. I have searched through the scriptures and I have come to realize that all of God's promises to his people are predicated on how well we know him. I talked about 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3 to 10 previously, where it says that God has given us everything we need for life and godly living. But it also says it is through our knowledge of him. Because the truth is this, if you don't know God, how do you know what promises he says he has made to you? If you don't know God, how do you know what you can ask of him? If you don't know him, how do you know what he likes and doesn't like? What kinds of prayers he will answer and the kinds that he will not answer? You have to know God. Listen, I have talked many times about how, my wife and I, we were married for 12 years and then I left. I was gone for 5 years. Okay? There were some issues in our marriage. We were not saved. We were not Christians at the time. And I busted out because I couldn't deal with it. And I left 5 years. My wife subsequently became saved, born again, follower of Jesus Christ. And then she learned to pray and started praying. But guess what? She prayed for year 1. I never came back. Prayed year 2. I never came back. Year 3, year 4. It was towards the end of the 4th year, going on year 5, I had now become saved, a follower of Jesus Christ, and I was listening to what the Holy Spirit was saying, and God turned my heart back towards my wife and put a new love for her in me. And so I came back. But guess what? If Naomi had prayed year 1, maybe year 1.5, maybe year 2, if she had gone that far and I didn't show up, she could have just gone and found herself somebody else, just a beautiful woman. There were a lot of men who wanted to be with her. She could have just picked one of them and moved on. But she knew what the promises of God were concerning her. She knew him and him saying to her that if you pray at 1 John chapter 5:14, if you pray to God according to his will, he hears you. And because you know that he hears you, you know you have what he's asked of you. 2 Peter chapter 1, 3-10 says, God has already provided you with everything you need for life and godly living, but you have to get into this through your knowledge of him. This is what it says in Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10. Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. Again here, knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So your PhDs, your 50 years in ministry, your ability to pray and write and serve God and all that stuff mean absolutely nothing if you don't have real knowledge of who he is. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. That was Proverbs 9:10. And Psalm chapter 9, verse 10 says, those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. All right? Those who know the name of God. And to know the name of God is not just to know the name of God. God has several names. He is Jehovah Rapha, the God who heals. That is a name of God. If you don't know him as a healer, then you don't get healing. If you are in need of provision, you pray to Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides. If you need provision, you don't pray to some other aspect of the person of God. So when the Bible says that those who know your name trust you, it's not just you know him as God. You have to know him in all of the facets, the multiple facets of who he is. There are some people who know me as Pastor Sam. There are others who know me as the CEO of the Enriched group of companies. My children know me as their daddy. So there are different facets to who I am, but they are all a part of me. When my children need me to be a father, they don't call the CEO of the Enriched group of companies. They don't even call Pastor Sam. When you need counseling in your marriage, you don't call Sam the CEO of Enriched Network. You call Sam the pastor, or Brother Sam, whatever you want to call me. That's the Sam you tap into. It's the same with God. Those who know your name, they trust you because why? You have never forsaken those who seek you. Again, it comes down to knowledge. How well do you know this God that you're praying to? How well do you know him? Now, some of you may be offended thinking that you know him, but no, you lie. You don't know the God that you claim to serve. You may know of him. You may know a part of him. but you don't know him as a man should know the God that he serves. Listen to me. Many people, you may have seen my wife Naomi in a magazine. You may have seen her on a television program. You may say to me, oh, Brother Sam, man, you have a beautiful wife. I know your wife. But how well do you know her? Do you know that my wife doesn't drink coffee because caffeine doesn't do well with her? Do you know that I don't bring my wife roses on Mother's Day or on Valentine's Day? I buy her orchids because that's what she prefers. How well do you know this God that you serve? Because if someone were to call me now and say to me, hey, Brother Sam, I saw your wife downtown Toronto smoking a cigarette, I will just laugh and say, you need glasses because you didn't see correctly, because I know my wife. Do you know why? Because I know that, first of all, she will not smoke. But the other thing is she is terribly allergic to cigarette smoke. You understand what I'm saying? So how well do you know this God that you serve? Do you know that he has promised that he will never leave you or forsake you? Do you know that everything you need for life and godly living, he has already done for you? Do you know that if you pray according to his will for your life, he has bound himself to answer your prayers? Do you know that? You see, this is important. How well do you know the God you serve? Because you could be missing out on your destiny. You could be missing out on what God can do for you simply because you don't know him. You're like that person who, if Naomi had opened the window, prayed after year 1, looked and didn't see me. So many people come to the edge of their breakthrough. You have prayed, you have believed God, prayed and believed God. And then one day you open the door and you look and you don't see the answer to your prayer, and you turn around and abandon all that you have been working for when you were really at the very edge of your breakthrough. And that only happens because you don't know the God that you serve. So 3 really important things in your prayer life. Number 1, let me go chronologically now. Number 1 is knowledge of God, because all of his promises are predicated on how well you and I know him. Number 2 is, out of the abundance of this knowledge of God, now you can utter some words. You can say the things that you need to say to him according to his will. And then number 3 is you're going to take action in the direction of your expected end. You're going to take action in the direction of the destiny God has called you to, because he has already placed everything you need for life and godly living along the path of your destiny. Don't be the Christian who is standing here looking for God's answer here when what he has for you is ahead of you because you didn't take action. Father, I thank you. I pray for your children that your word will enrich their spirits, that their knowledge of you will increase as they press in and seek after you, that they will utter powerful words of destiny and take action to indicate that they expect you to respond to their prayers according to your word and according to your will. Father, we lift up your name. We give you praise. We give you glory and honor. In Jesus' name we've prayed. Thank you so much. God bless you.